Hello, thank you for joining us to find out more about what it's like to work in design. I'm Liz, I'm a freelance graphic designer and illustrator, so I work for myself rather than for a larger organisation. But with me today, we've got some guests who will be able to tell us more about working in different aspects of the design industry. Welcome. So we've got three people here on the couch with me. Izzy is off screen and she'll be joining us in just a second. Could everyone introduce themselves? So just name and job title to start, please.
Okay. My name's Kerry Levitt. I'm the creative director at Do Digital, and we're a 3D specialist.
My name's Alex Bull. I'm head of design at Storm & Shelter, and we're a content production company down the bay.
I'm Ryan Dillon Davies, and I'm a trainee architectural technologist with T. Richard Jones from Carmarthenshire.
Thank you all for joining us today. So during the webinar, we've got some short films to show you. And it's also worth telling you that you're going to be able to send in some questions to our panel later that we'll answer later in the webinar. And of course, we're going to be speaking more to Alex, Kerry, Ryan and Izzy. But to start, here's a short video to help set the scene for the design sector. So you'll have noticed that I am now off screen and Izzy is now on screen. Welcome, Izzy.
Thank you.
So as we saw, the design sector describes a range of individual design disciplines. We'll provide some information on where you can find out more at the end of today's webinar, but in the time that we've got today, we're going to focus on design roles. To get us started, it's probably worth taking a moment to think about what we mean by design. So it could be described as creativity deployed to a specific end. So essentially, designers work to solve problems using their creative skills, usually in the response to a brief from a client or a problem that they're trying to resolve. So practically, that means that designers could be working with fabrics or other types of materials to create products, or they could be working digitally to create content like games, websites, apps, etc. Would the panel agree with that? Does that seem like a fair definition?
Absolutely.
Anything you'd like to add?
I think design can make the difference with so many different industries now.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's striving to create their own space in the market, and design is something that will separate you from the rest of people. So it's exceptionally important to create that difference.
Absolutely. Thank you. It's time to find out a little bit more about some of our panellists. So we're going to start with Ryan. Ryan's on the end there. We went to see Ryan where he works in Ammanford. So Ryan, can you tell us a little bit more about T. Richard Jones, your role there and how you ended up working there?
We are a construction company based in Ammanford as our main offices, but we have sites and jobs across South Wales, mainly in Carmarthenshire as a county where we're based. We work in Swansea, we also have jobs up in Cardiff,
Wow.
and that ranges from commercial jobs to more domestic jobs. And as a company itself, we have many in-house teams now. We're developing our design team, and my role as a trainee architectural technologist will be to assist the design team and the manager, which is building information modelling. We're looking to develop new technologies within our company, such as Revit, CAD, which we mainly use at the moment, but we're looking at VR, and we're also looking at more augmented reality and promoting that for the younger generations for construction and architecture.
Okay, fab, thank you. So you mentioned there that your role was an architectural design technologist. Could you explain a little bit about what that is?
It's a role which will, like I said, mainly assist the design team, which is a team of 3 of us at the moment. In my day-to-day role, I do 2D drawings and 3D drawings with the team. That could be assisting then also from other departments within the company, as we are strongly promoting collaboration within the industry. And with technology such as building information modelling, it's such an exciting thing to get into, and it's something that attracted me to join the industry, as we're promoting a collaborative working in as an ethic in our office. We will work with quantity surveyors, engineers, architects, and we'll also combine that and combine our plans to also use systems like clash detection, which avoids mistakes on sites as well. So it's quite a diverse role, and it's such an awesome industry to get into.
Sounds interesting. So what sort of projects are you working on? What sort of clients do you work with?
Currently we have a few schools. Funnily enough, my previous primary school, we're working on this 5-year-old school, so it's quite a full circle moment to go back and be designing and editing and creating plans, and then also knocking it down.
That might be quite cathartic.
But it's something to bring the new generation, and I think that's important, especially for the construction industry and architecture industry, is the new technology. It's not just looking at it as just bricks and mortar anymore. It's such a diverse industry with such diverse roles, especially for creative people who got problem solving, logical people who are great at maths, which I'm not, but for design roles in the industry, there's such a diverse from architects, architectural technologists, you have landscape architects, and as well as that, just creative people can be more logical people as well, where it would be a site manager, for example, who would be very creative in terms of using logic to get past problems that are just thrown at them every day. And you could argue it's the same with design as well.
So you're working very much as part of a team.
Collaborative working, yeah.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Do you go out and about much? Do you get to go onto site, or are you more office-based?
I'm more office-based, but we do tend to visit sites to check progress and take surveys to get exact calculations then as well, as the drawing will adapt and have new conditions as the project goes on.
Okay, fab. Thank you. So what route did you follow to get into the job that you're doing now?
Let's take it back to when I had done GCSEs. For my GCSE options, I knew straight away I wanted to be in a creative design industry. I wasn't sure which I'd like to specify in or dedicate myself to, because I had a range of interests from photography to art, drawing and editing. So I decided to do design and technology, graphics, ICT, and I also done art and design. And from doing them over 2 years, they complemented each other and promoted what I wanted to do. I ended up doing work experience then with local authority in a design team role, and I was there for a week. And they introduced me to building information modelling, virtual reality, all this new stuff that I'd never heard of going into construction as an industry. So that piqued my interest. And when it came to finishing off my exams, I also went on work experience again. And I did a complete U-turn of being sent down that A-level route as being the only route. I decided to do an apprenticeship with local authority building control. And from that experience for the last 2 years, it's essentially learning the rule book to a building or construction, as you'd say. And now in my role as a trainee architectural technologist, it's transferred over. So I'm using my creative skills, my transferable skills, And I think that's important as well to combat the skills gap in many industries.
So the apprenticeship gave you a knowledge base that you're now able to draw on, but
Knowledge
in a more creative
base,
way.
yeah. Knowledge base from a design base, which I already had, you could argue, on a creative side. Knowing the softwares and just interpersonal skills, communication and that collaborative working is such a promotion now, day to day. And we're living in an industry where lots of people have degrees, and with schools pushing more and more people towards degrees, everyone's got one, and employers are looking out for work skills, transferable skills, and skills you just wouldn't even think of just from picking up the phone, talking to someone, and listening as well. So it's many things I could say that an apprenticeship has aided my progression, as well as the technical aspect I've gained from it and knowledge.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ryan. I'm sure some of the pupils watching will have some questions for you later. In fact, now is a good time to remind anyone watching live, if you've got questions for any of our guests, we'll have a couple of minutes later for you to think about what you'd like to ask and then send your questions through. The email address that you'll need to send questions to should be on your screen now. And our guests will answer as many of the questions as they can live during the webinar. On to Alex and Izzy, both of whom work at Storm & Shelter. We went in to visit them and their colleagues in the studio, so before we chat in person, let's find out a little bit more about what goes on there with this short film.
Hello, my name's Alex. I'm head of design at Storm & Shelter. I've been here for a little over 2 years now, and my job is to basically oversee the motion graphics team, make sure all of our work basically meets a certain standard, as well as dipping into a bit of design and animation myself.
Hi, my name's Nick. I'm production director here at Storm & Shelter. We started it around about 6 years ago. 3 of us did a project together, a big charity project, which was pretty insane. We didn't kill each other or ourselves at the end of it and just thought, yeah, whatever, let's do this full time. And we give it a go and we're still here.
I'm Izzy, I'm a junior designer at Storm & Shelter. I've recently graduated with a first class honours at Cardiff Met studying graphic communication.
So I'd say my role sort of involves looking after the team, looking after all the client stuff, looking after all the projects as well to make sure they're just delivered on time, on budget and on brief. And we work with all kinds of people as well, so people like O2, Yamaha, people like Twitter, all kinds of people, and we do things like documentaries, TV commercials, social media content, pretty much a bit of everything really. But the main thing is we love what we do.
I've always been really creative. All throughout school I've done art. So I decided to do an art and design foundation course where I learned a bit more about design, and then that took me on to doing a graphic communication degree.
At the end of my course, I was lucky enough to bag myself an award, which pretty much got me my first job and has ultimately led me to where I am today.
When it comes to looking for creatives to work with, like one of the big things for me in particular is attitude. Creativity is great and all, but you've really got to have that drive to really go after what you really want to do. And especially if you're going out there making your own stuff, it really helps to prove that.
Any student wanting to study design, I would recommend to be as experimental as you can. It's better to try and stand out and push yourself to be the best that you can, rather than playing it safe.
I love that each day is completely different. Not only here at Storm & Shelter, but in the industry in general. Like, you can't really anticipate what's really going to come up next. And I think that is one massive thing that I would look for in a designer, is someone who's quite receptive to that, but also someone who is genuinely passionate about what they do, because I think you can really see that in someone.
So now we've had the behind the scenes insight, we can talk to Alex and Izzy to find out more. The studio looks hectic and like it's a lot of fun, actually.
Yeah.
Alex, if we start with you, could you tell us a little bit about your role and your route into it?
Yeah, so I'm head of design. So there's a team of 9 of us, and in that team there's a small team of 3 designers and animators, and I pretty much head up that team and make sure everything that we put out is meets a certain standard, pretty much. The way I sort of got into it is quite interesting. I was always quite creative from a young age. It was always either sport or art, and then I stopped growing, so I thought art was the way for me. So I was always quite traditional in school, like drew like quite traditionally, oil painting, that sort of stuff, and didn't really get into design until I got into university, where I studied a year of product design, and then found through that year that kind of wasn't really for me. Where I changed over to graphic design, and I think that was probably one of the best decisions that I've probably made. I think, and it's nothing against product design at all. It's just I found I wasn't really that interested in it, and I was more interested in branding the products as opposed to designing the products. So I think that's really important to like make the changes to make sure what you're doing is actually what you're interested in, because that will be what motivates you and drives you to keep doing it. So then, I changed over to graphic design, craft communication course on Cardiff Met. And then at the end of the course, we were made to submit some work to some competitions. I was lucky enough to get, as you saw in the video, an award out of that. And then off the back of that, got myself my first job in London as a junior designer. And then, I spent 2 years in London in 2 different companies, which was like really, really valuable. It's almost like, I'd almost say London is like a bit of a shortcut of sorts. But it was really interesting. I learned a lot of stuff in such a short space of time. But then found like the lifestyle really was for me. I knew my heart was always in Cardiff. So I moved back, freelance for a bit, and then met the crazy guys at Storm and Shelter. And it's like, not one day will be like the same. Like it's always something new, something different, something interesting all the time. But our day-to-day stuff at the moment is pretty much like we live in 2D motion graphics land, creating content for like O2, Twitter, Yamaha, those sorts of clients. But it's always an interesting day in the office, isn't it?
It looks very high octane.
Yeah.
So you said that the design team work within the larger team.
Yeah.
So you're collaborating with other people within Storm and Shelter?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think before I joined about 2.5 years ago, it's been 2.5 years. They primarily did video production, and then since I joined, I always wanted to make use of my knowledge and background in graphic design. So I really wanted to kind of like push that, and motion design was like made the most sense. Like it's applying my knowledge in graphic design, but also creating videos, which what Storm Shell do. And then since then, like the team has grown to 3, and I wouldn't really say we're like a separate like department as such. We're very integrated in the office, and we produce all of the like design elements needed in all the film projects, as well as creating all the motion graphics projects ourselves.
Fab, thank you, Alex. So Izzy is a member of your team.
She is, yeah.
Hello, Izzy. So what's your role at Storm and Shelter?
So I'm a junior designer, and I've been there for nearly 3 months.
Wow.
So
Still
quite
new.
Yeah.
So, and how did you end up working in Storm and Shelter? What was the route that you took?
So I was really creative in school too. And then when I got to 6th form, I then did a graphics A-level because I'm used to doing art before that. And I was like, oh, this is cool. So then I did a foundation course so I could learn a bit more about design, try a bit of everything. And then I ended up on the graphic communication course at Cardiff Met, the same one that Alex did, but a few years later. And then part of the degree, we had to create a final major project, and that was then exhibited in our end of year degree show. And then that's where I met Alex and Aaron from Storm and Shelter, and we started talking about my work, and then they said that a junior designer role was coming up. So then we met up afterwards, and I got hired, and it's great.
Wow, that's amazing. So straight out of university.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So what sort of things do you do day to day in your role?
Bit of everything, and I think that that's why it's so different to uni, is that in uni you spend so long on a project, whereas so I do the designs before then it goes to Aaron to make it move for the motion then. So I do mainly just the designs, and it's a lot quicker than uni, which is good, but I've learned so much more. I dabbled in a bit of motion in uni, but not that much. So then coming into Storm and Shelter, I've learned so much about loads about design, but also about motion, which I didn't have that much knowledge in before, but I'm learning more and more each day about it. So that's
really
been
learning
really
on
good.
the job.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you, Izzy. Thanks to both of you. And remember, those of you who are watching live, you'll be able to ask Alex and Izzy some questions later on. Okay, so it's wonderful also to have Kerry from Do Digital here today. Hi. Kerry. Let's find out a little bit more about what Do Digital is all about in this short video before we speak to Kerry to find out more.
I'm Darren Crockett and I'm Managing Director of Do Digital Agency. We've got 18 staff. We're based in Taftswell, and most of those are 3D artists.
My name is Kerry Levitt. I work for the Do Digital Agency. I'm the creative director here, and I'm in charge of pulling together all the creative output and managing all the design-led output. So we have animators here, we have modelers, modelers as in making 3D models. We have interactive specialists, so they take a 3D environment and it's using gaming technology basically and creating, they're not games, but they're gaming environments to create an experience of someone walking around a building to see how it works for them.
I'm James Leonard. I am 3D coordinator and 3D artist here. So as a 3D artist, I have to create digital worlds of things before they're built. So a building which is going to go up down the bay, or a chair before it's been designed or sold to a client. We make 3D versions of those objects on the computer, we texture them, we light them, and we make them look as if they're real products. In short, we're a photographer who works on the computer.
I think design is certainly becoming more digital. The concepts aren't, they still need to be the right concept, the right sort of solution, but how we realise that solution is exceptionally digital and instant.
For our 3D artists, a lot of the work is office-based. However, they do communicate and have a lot of conversations with people all over the world, whether or not that's via email or phone conversations. There's a select few who do a lot more going out and seeing customers, and mostly that's the front end, that's the sales guys, the creative team.
Well, I did art and I really enjoyed it, and you get a different set of skills from art or DT than you'll ever get from maths and physics or anything else. I like those, I did them, but it's a different way of thinking, and in a job like ours we actually need both all the time. On the computer I have to input things like gravity values and lighting values, which I learned in physics, but then I also have to figure out what looks good.
My name is Howard Glyn Jones. I am the account director at Do Digital Agency, and what I do is look after the clients in its most simplistic form.
So one of the things that we do as an organisation, which is really important, is embracing the technology and digital side of it. So even though myself, I like to go out and see people, it doesn't mean that you have to be in London to do this job. A lot of our client base is in the city. However, we use emails and have conversations with people all over the world. So just because you think you have to go to the big smoke, so to speak, that means that's what I've got to do to get my job. Doesn't mean that at all. When you work with an organisation that has those networks, then you can take advantage of that, and then you can build up your network of people around the world. I remember when I used to sort of sit in my house or be back in Pontypridd, and I'd say to myself, I'd have to go and see the world. But now I see the world from the comfort of my office in Taftswell. And if I decide that I want to go out, and I want to go and see these people face to face, it's a great day out. I get to see a lot of people, and I sort of build my confidence up with travelling and stuff like that. When we're looking for candidates, the ideal person needs to have the fundamentals in terms of the 3D packages, Photoshop, 3D Studio Max and V-Ray. However, don't be intimidated by that, because we can teach those skills. It's always nice to have that as a background or an understanding of it, and maybe a passion as well for the 3D industry. And definitely a personality, which means that they can fit within a working environment, They're able to pick up the phone, have a conversation with somebody that maybe they've never spoken to before. But again, these are fundamental skill sets that we can develop with the people that come along. But really, people who just want to be around other 3D artists, that's the most important one.
So there we heard about Do Digital, which illustrates another area of design again. Kerry, we've got you here today. I'm aware that in your role you get involved with recruitment to Do Digital. So it would be interesting to know from you what opportunities there are for progression in your organisation and in the sector, I suppose.
Yeah. So we like to take students and people straight out of university and college, just so we can kind of mould them into our vision of what we need in society, you know. So getting people in from university with some real world experience is really beneficial for us. So you know, any kind of sort of initial experience that they can have on work placements really works for us. Once they kind of come into the studio, then we've got different divisions. So we do lots of animation, we do CGI, image creation, we do interactive design, so using gaming technology to create spaces and environments. So we've got different departments coming in. So once you kind of come in, you learn the basic skills, you have those basic 3D skills, and then finding your place within that arena can kind of help you move around and get a little bit more knowledge, which can transfer between each other. And then I suppose the more experience you get, the more skilled you get within that, you can move up and start managing different projects, different parts of the team, and kind of moving on that way.
And do you find that there's a lot of competition for certain roles within the organisation?
There's competition for certain jobs, because obviously you get different sorts of jobs in a studio coming in. Some are a little bit more practical, utilitarian maybe, but equally as important, that need to be done and need to be done well. And others are something, you know, a little bit sexier, where you're kind of using or taking a London architect's firm. They've got a fantastic design, and your job is to take that design and create that visual, which can be really exciting on a fantastic project. And then you can take that from that visual perspective and throwing it into a gaming environment, so we can walk around and experience that whole space. And obviously, there's that's quite new technology that we're using for, you know, pit situations, and a lot of people kind of fancy a bit of that, but they're too busy working on that over there. And it's good competition, you know. Learning to develop your skills as soon as you kind of get into the workplace is vital, because well, with technology it moves on so fast all the time anyway. You really do need to keep up with that and grab hold of it. So
someone working within Do Digital then has the opportunity to upskill.
Of course, yeah.
Because you're keeping them at the cutting edge.
Absolutely, and you know, as new technologies come in, if you can kind of find a bit of interest in that and grab hold of a bit of technology, and then see how we can make that into a real world application for an industry, then game on. It's great fun.
So as an employer, what would make a candidate stand out as someone being a really good fit for a creative or design role? What are you really looking for?
I think it's appetite is one of the key things. The key to learn and to grab hold of a project and take it as far as they can and be as diligent as they can, produce the best work they can, and respond to criticism, because we all make mistakes and we all kind of can do things better. It's how you respond to that criticism, take it on board and move forward with that next time.
Thank you. That's really, really good advice. So, as we mentioned earlier, I'm just going to move on. We're going to take a quick pause for 2 minutes to give you, who are watching live, a chance to consider questions that you'd like to ask our panel and send them in. While we do that, you'll see information on the screen showing how you can send in the questions, and also a countdown to show how much time you've got. If you could let us know what school or area from with the question as well, then that would be great. thank you for that. We've got some questions that have come in. We're just sifting through them. We'll kick off with a question that we've had. Is it worth people studying creative subjects at school? If we start with Alex.
At school? Yeah, definitely, because I think it forms the foundation to inform what you want to do eventually.
Mm-hmm.
Because without that foundation, you don't really know what area to go into, I think. And I think, although the stuff that I was doing in school is probably like a million miles away from the stuff I'm doing now, it definitely like built that interest. I think, and if I hadn't have done that, I probably would have gone into like another area pretty much. But
it forms a thought process as well, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You know, so it's not necessarily about the practicalities of what you're doing and the technology that you're using. It's about how you attack a project and a problem, and problem solving. So creative subjects kind of give you a different way of looking at problems
and thinking about things
and kind of getting to a different sort of solution. So you can apply that different sort of creative thinking to all sorts of problems, from whether it be architectural, which is a bit more technical, to sort of the creative arts.
Yeah.
It's all problem solving, and it's all relevant. It all starts by asking the right questions.
Ryan, I know I know you've come into your role through a slightly alternative route, and you decided against studying A-levels, but did you find that foundation in doing art and design at GCSE, was that helpful to you?
Yes, definitely. Separately to the points that were made, which I totally agree with, as someone that's done creative subjects 2 years ago at GCSE, I found that a key benefit I didn't even realise was the idea that getting you to write down your thoughts, getting you to record your work and development, so building that portfolio at such a young age as well. And if you start to keep that from that point to when you get to the point where you're working in the industry, you have a diverse range of marketing yourself, and I think that's key for someone working in design, is the ability to show evidence of what you can do and where you're going.
Yeah, that development is really important, isn't it? Thank you, guys. Moving on, we've got a very practical question. What type of salary can you earn in design roles? Izzy, I'm going to start with you. Sorry to put you on the spot.
Don't go in for it for the money.
You don't have to tell us how much you're earning necessarily. But is it a good salary? Do you feel like it was worth putting yourself through university for 3 years?
Yeah, I mean, coming straight out of uni and getting a job, it shows that there are jobs out there, and it's a job and it's money. So yeah, I think it's enough. And
it's a starting point.
Yeah, it's a starting point, but I think there's always there's room for progression in, well, the job roles, salary, all of that. So I think it's just, and it comes with experience as well. So when you are straight out of uni, you're not going to be at the top earning loads. So.
Yeah. Kerry, as you employ people, what sort of salaries are we talking about for a designer?
You know, it varies dramatically based on skills and how valuable they are to the organisation, to the business. You don't go into this industry for the money. You go into this because that's what you're all about. That's what you do. That's what you realistically, you couldn't do anything else because you're a designer. It's a mindset. So it's a good living. Yeah, so it ranges dramatically, and you can be very comfortable if you're good enough.
It's about the money, but about the joy.
It's about the joy. It's a vocational subject. You're a designer or you're not.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you for that. We're going to have to leave it there with the questions, and thank you to everyone who sent those in. Before we wrap up, and we're going to give you some links to some more information that you might find useful and interesting about the design sector, we'd like to get your feedback on this webinar. We're going to take 1 minute to run through 5 short questions. So teachers, if you could count up a quick show of hands for each and jot them down, that would be really helpful. So here we go. How many people are watching? So can we count the number of pupils? And the number of teachers and staff? And then anyone else who might have snuck into the classroom when you weren't watching. Thank you. Second question. Overall, what did you think of the webinar that you attended today? So a show of hands for excellent. A show of hands for good. A show of hands for okay. and a show of hands for not good. Apologies to teachers who are having to count very rapidly. Third question, have you learnt something new about the design industry today? So a show of hands for yes. And a show of hands for no, which I assume will be very quick. Question 4, how well has this webinar improved your knowledge of the opportunities in this industry? So first of all, extremely, then very, fairly, or not at all. Then, do you know how you can find out more information about this topic? We can have a show of hands for yes. And then a show of hands for no. And then finally, final question, how motivated are you now to go out and find out more about this industry? Extremely, very, fairly, and not at all. So teachers, if you can put those results into an email and send it to us at ask@careerswales.com, your feedback will be really helpful when we're planning future webinars. Also, if you want to add in any other comments to that email, please do. And that brings our session to the end. A huge thank you to Izzy, Kerry, Alex and Ryan for joining us today, and also to all of those people who took part in the videos for providing a really useful insight into working in the design industry. And a massive thank you to everyone out there for joining us and sending in your questions. In the meantime, if you need more careers information or advice, visit careerswales.com. Thanks everyone.